Zaporizhia, or Zaporozhye, is a city in southeastern Ukraine, situated on the banks of the Dnieper River. It is the administrative center of the Zaporizhia Oblast. Administratively, it is incorporated as a city of oblast significance and serves as an administrative center of Zaporizhia Raion, though it does not belong to the Raion. Currently the city is the sixth largest in Ukraine. Population, 770,672 euro, 2013 est. Geography, the city is located in southeastern Ukraine and lies along banks of the Dnieper River now. The city covers 334 kilometers to at an elevation of 50 m above sea level. In the middle of the city there is the 12 kilometers 2 kilometers island of Khortytsia, which splits the river into two streams called the New and Old Dnieper. The New Dnieper is about 800 m wide and the Old Dnieper is about 200 m. There are also several small rivers in the city, which enter the Dnieper, Suka and Mokromskova, Kosyum, and Verkhnya Khortytsia. The flora of Khortytsia Island is unique and healthy because of dry steppe air and a lot of fresh water around which protects the island from the polluted air of the heavy industrial city. Khortytsia Island is a national park with a large number of large ravines called balka, hiking routes and historical monuments. The island is a very popular recreational area for both kids and adults and has a large number of sanatoriums, resorts and health centers. There are comfortable sand beaches for swimming and other water activities here as well. Climate. History. Prehistory Archaeological finds in the area suggest that Scythian nomads were living there 2,000 to 3,000 years ago. The Scythians were replaced in time by Khazars, Pechenegs, Kumans, Tatars, and Eastern Slavs. The trade route from the Varangians to the Greeks passed through Khortytsia Island in old times. In 1552 Dmytro Vishnevitsky erected wood-earth fortifications on the island Mala Khortytsia in the Dnieper River near the island Khortytsia. These fortifications were a prototype of the Zaporizhian Syke. The Syke was a stronghold of the Cossacks who lived south of the rapids of the Dnieper on the border of the Polish-Euro-Lithuanian Rzeczpospolita and the Grand Duchy of the Moscow. Foundation and names. The modern city was established in 1770 as the fortress of Alexandrovskaya, named so for General Alexander Golitsyn and designed to protect the southern territories from Turkish threats. It was one link in the so-called Dnieper fortification line. Some historians disagree that the fort was named after Golitsyn. Other possible namesakes include Alexander Vyazemsky and Alexander Rumyantsov. In 1806, it became a town and was named Alexandrovsk. In 1921, the name was changed to Zaporizhia, literally meaning beyond the rapids, alluding to the rapids which used to exist on the Dnieper River at the time, before the construction of the Dnieper hydroelectric station in 1932. German settlers. In 1789, Mennonites from Prussia accepted an invitation from Catherine the Great and settled in what became the Khortytsia colony, northwest of Khortytsia Island. Mennonite-owned mills and factories were built in Alexandrovsk and later expropriated by the communist government. After the Russian Revolution many Mennonites emigrated, fled as refugees, or were deported from the area. Currently few Mennonites live in Zaporizhia. Mennonite buildings still exist in the area and in the other main Mennonite colonies center, current-day Molokansk. The ferry. In 1829, it was proposed to build a rope ferry to transport across the Dnieper. This was built to a design that the Tsar had approved for use all over the Russian Empire, and could carry a dozen carts. The ferry closed when the Kitkaz Bridge replaced it in 1904. The railway. The original railway bridge over the Dnieper was the Kitkaz Bridge, which was designed by Y.D. Proskoryakov and E.O. Patton. Construction was supervised by F.W. Latt. The bridge had a span of 336 m, and crossed the river with single arch of 190 m span. The upper tier carried a double-track railway line, whilst the lower tier was a road bridge with pedestrian walkways either side of the bridge. It was built at the narrowest part of the Dnieper River at Volch to the first Ego-Gorla. Construction started in 1900, and it opened for pedestrian traffic in 1902. The official opening of the bridge was April 17, 1904. The railway traffic on the bridge only commenced on January 22, 1908. The opening of the Kykes Bridge led to the industrial growth of Alexandrovsk before the Communist Revolution. During the World War I in 1916 from St. Petersburg was transferred the aviation engines plant of DEKA Stock Association that today is better known as the Motorcycle. Civil War. The Kykes Bridge was of strategic importance during the Russian Civil War, and carried troops, ammunition, the wounded and medical supplies. Because of this bridge, Alexandrovsk and its environs was the scene of fierce fighting from 1918 to 1921 between the Red Army and the White Armies of Denikin and Rangel, Pillara and German-Austrian troops, and after their defeat, the struggle with insurgents led by Grigoryev, and Makhno. The bridge was closed a number of times because of damage. The most serious damage was inflicted by Makhno's troops when they retreated from Alexandrovsk in 1920 and blew a 40 wide gap in the center of the bridge. People's Commissar of Railways Zhinsky ordered the repair of the bridge. The metallurgic plant of Bryansk Joint Stock Company, AU, in Dnepropetrovsk built a replacement section, which was raised into place. The Kykes Bridge reopened on September 14, 1921. On October 19, 1921, the Soviet Council of Labor and Defense awarded the Yekaterinitsky Railroad the Order of the Red Banner of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic for the early restoration of the Kykes Bridge. Industrialization in the 1920s and 1930s. In the early 20th century, Zaporizhia was a small unremarkable town of the Russian Empire, which acquired industrial importance during the socialist industrialization of the 1930s. In the 1929–1932 master plan for city construction was developed. At 10 kilometers from the old town Alexandrovsk at the narrowest part of the Dnieper River was planned to build the hydroelectric power station, the most powerful in Europe at that time. Close to the station should be a new modern city and a giant steel and aluminum plants. Later the station was named Dnieper River, the steel plant Zaporizhye, and the new part of the city Southeastern. Production of the aluminum plant according to the plan should exceed the overall production of the aluminum all over Europe at that time. State Institute for Design of Metallurgical Plants, AU, developed a project of creation of the Dnieper Industrial Complex. Gipromes consulted with various companies, including the Frieden Engineering Company of Chicago, which participated in the design and construction of the blast furnaces. In the 1930s the American United Engineering and Foundry Company built a strip mill, which produced hot and cold rolling steel strip. This was a copy of the Ford River Rouge steel mill. Annual capacity of the mill reached 600,000 tons. Strip width was 66 inches. There was a second section that used a Soviet copy of the Demag AG strip mill that produced 45-inch wide strip steel. The hydroelectric dam, Dnieper River. The turning point in the history of the city was the construction of the hydroelectric dam, which began in 1927 and completed in 1932. The principal designer of the project was I.G. Alexandrov, AU, the construction manager A.V. Vinter, AU, the chief architect V.A. Vesnin and the chief American advisor Hugh Cooper. According to the project, the installed generating capacity was 560 megawatts, the length of a convex dam was 760 m, the width was 56 m, the height was 60 m. 8 water turbines and 5 generators were designed and manufactured in the United States. The other 3 generators were made at the Leningrad factory Elektrosila. As a result of commissioning of the station the Dnieper Rapids were flooded and the river became navigable from Kiev to Kherson. In 1980, Dnieper River's power was increased to 1,388 megawatts. Southeastern. Between the hydroelectric dam and industrial area in 10 kilometers from the center of the old Alexandrovsk was established residential district No. 6, which was named Southeastern. In 20th doctrinaire idealistic enthusiasm of the architects was reflected in the intense debate about the habitation of the socialist community. The architects believed that by using new architectural forms they could create a new society. District Number 6 was one of the few implementations of urban development concepts. The construction of the district began in 1929 and finished in 1932. The main idea guiding the architects was the creation of the Garden City, the city of the future. Multi-story houses with large, roomy apartments were built in Zaporizhye with spacious yards planted with grass and trees around the buildings. Nikolai Kolly, V. A. Vesnin, G. M. Orlov, V. G. Levov and others designed the Dnieper and Zaporozhye. Le Corbusier visited the town few times in the 1930s. The architects used the ideas of the constructivist architecture. The known ring house was designed by V. G. Levov. Families of the Soviet and American engineers, advisors, and industry bosses lived in Zaporizhye at that time. Most of the workers during the construction of the hydropower station and plants lived in dugouts at 15th and Aluminum districts. The district border is limited by Verkhnaya Ulitsa on the south and by the hydroelectric power on the north. At the intersection between Lenin Avenue and Verkhnaya Street, architect I. L. Kozliner set a tower with 7 stories. The tower supposedly indicates the entrance in the Zaporizhye from the south. Closer to the dam, the second tower was raised. These 2 towers point out a straight line of the central street of the district. The names of the streets have changed several times. The original name of Metallurgist Avenue was Enthusiast Alley. This road leads to the factories. At that time, they believed that people going to the plant had only positive feelings like joy, pride, and enthusiasm. At the end of the road stands a 1963 sculpture of the metallurgist by sculptor Ivan Nosenko. During the German occupation, it was named Shevchenko Avenue. Later it was renamed Stalin Avenue. And after his death, it got present name of Metallurgist Avenue. Lenin Avenue originally had the name Lubkinit Avenue. 40 years of Soviet Ukraine Street was once called Savnakomovska Street and during the German occupation Hitler Alley. Big Zaporizhia, District Number 6 is a small part of the global project called Big Zaporizhia. This project was designed for the city, to enable 500,000 people to live in 7 different areas: Vosenka, Boberka, Kitkaz, Alexandrovsk, Pavlo Kitkaz, Island Khortytsa, and each district must be independent of the others and yet part of Th-degree United City. The city line should be stretched along the banks of the Dnieper River for 22 kilometers. Dnieper Railway bridges. The location of the Kitkaz Bridge was in the flood zone upstream of the hydroelectric dam. Initially, it was planned to disassemble it and rebuild it in another location. But expert advice was that this was not cost-effective as it was cheaper to build a new bridge. The building of the hydroelectric dam meant that a new bridge was required to take the railway over the Dnieper. Instead of having a single bridge, as before, it was decided to take the railway over the island Khortytsa. The wide part of the river between Khortytsa and the city is known as the New Dnieper, and the narrower part between Khortytsa and the suburbs on the right bank of the river is known as the Old Dnieper. The New Dnieper was crossed by a 3-arch 2-tier bridge. Each of the arches spans 140 m. When the approach spans are included, the total length is 715 meters weighing 8,480 tons. The Old Dnieper was crossed by a single-span arch bridge with a total length of 370 meters. The arch spans of 224 m and was then the largest single-span bridge in Europe. This bridge weighed 5,220 tons. Both bridges were designed by Professor Strelitsky. They were made of riveted steel, and had 2 tiers, the upper tier for rail traffic and the lower tier for road traffic and pedestrians. They were assembled by a combination of Czechoslovakian and Soviet workers under the direction of a Soviet engineer named Konstantinov. The arches are steel made by the Vitkovetskom steel plant in Czechoslovakia. Other steel work was made at the Dnepropetrovsk metallurgical plant. The new bridges opened on November 6, 1931. The Kitkaz Bridge was demolished afterwards. Eastern Front German occupation. The war between the USSR and Germany began on June 22, 1941. In the USSR this war was called the Great Patriotic War, 1941–1945. After the outbreak of the war, the Soviet government started evacuating industrial equipment from the city to Siberia before the Germans reached the city. The NKVD shot political prisoners in the city. On August 18, 1941, elements of the German 1st Panzergruppe seized the outskirts of Zaporizhia on the right bank and the island Khortytsia. The Red Army blew a 120MX-10M hole in the Dnieper hydroelectric dam at 16 o'clock on August 18, 1941, producing a flood wave that swept from Zaporizhia to Nikopol, killing local residents as well as soldiers from both sides. Since no official death toll was released at the time, the estimated number of victims varies widely. Most historians puts it at between 20,000 and 100,000, based on the number of people then living in the flooded areas. After 2 days, the city defenders received reinforcements, and held the left bank of the river for 45 days. During this time people dismantled heavy machinery, packed and loaded them on the railway platform, marked and accounted for with wiring diagrams. Zaporozhye alone exported 9,600 railway cars with the equipment. Zaporizhia was taken on October 3, 1941. The German occupation of Zaporizhia lasted 2 years and 10 days. During this time the Germans shot over 35,000 people, and sent 58,000 people to Germany as forced labor. The Germans used forced labor to try to restore the Dnieper hydroelectric dam and the steel works. Local citizens established an underground resistance organization in spring 1942. The Donbas-Stalingrad and Moscow-Crimea railway lines through Zaporizhia were an important supply line for the Germans in 1942-43, but the Big Three-Arch Dnieper railway bridge at Zaporizhia was blown up by the retreating Red Army on August 18, 1941, with further demolition work done during September 1941, and the Germans did not bring it back into operation until summer 1943. As a result, all goods had to be reloaded and tank wagons carrying petrol could not go through to the front. When the Germans reformed Army Group South in February 1943, it had its headquarters in Zaporizhia. The loss of Kharkiv and other cities caused Adolf Hitler to fly to this headquarters on February 17, 1943, where he stayed until February 19 and met the Army Group Commander Field Marshal Erich von Manstein, and was persuaded to allow Army Group South to fight a mobile defense that quickly led to much of the lost ground being recaptured by the Germans in the Third Battle of Kharkov. Hitler visited the headquarters in Zaporizhia again on March 10, 1943, where he was briefed by von Manstein and his Air Force counterpart Field Marshal Wolfram Freiherr von Richthofen. Hitler visited the headquarters at Zaporizhia for the last time on September 8, 1943. In mid-September 1943 the Army Group moved its headquarters from Zaporizhia to Kirovograd. Both big railway bridge over the new Dnieper and the smaller one over the old Dnieper were damaged in an air raid by a group of 8 Ilyushin Il-2s led by Lieutenant Ayazmanov on September 21, 1943. Liberation. In mid-August 1943, the Germans started building the Panther-Votan defense line along the Dnieper from Kiev to Crimea, and retreated back to it in September 1943. The Germans held the city as a bridgehead over the Dnieper, with elements of 40th Panzer and 17th Corps. The Soviet Southwestern Front, commanded by Army General Rodion Malinovsky, attacked the city on October 10, 1943. Whilst the defenders held against the attacks, the Red Army reinforced its troops and launched a surprise night attack at 22 o'clock on October 13. Laying down a barrage of shell fire bigger than anything seen to date and throwing in no fewer than 10 divisions strongly supported by armor. The Red Army broke into the bridgehead, forcing the Germans to abandon it on October 14. The retreating Germans destroyed the Zaporozhye steel plant almost completely. They demolished the big railway bridge again, and demolished the turbine building and damaged 32 of the 49 bays of the Dnieper hydroelectric dam. The city has a street between Orjonikidze and Zavtnevich districts and a memorial in Zavtnevich district dedicated to Red Army Lieutenant Yurtsenko, who commanded the tank, which first entered the city. He and his crew were killed in the battle for the city. The Red Army did not recapture the parts of the city on the right bank until 1944. The rebuilding of the Dnieper hydroelectric dam commenced on July 7, 1944. The first electricity was produced from the restored dam on March 3, 1947. An independent Ukraine . During the 2014 Euromaidan regional state administration occupations, protests against President Viktor Yanukovych were also held in Zaporizhia. On February 23, 2014, Zaporizhia's regional state administration building was occupied by 4,500 protesters. Mid-April 2014 there were clashes between Ukrainian activists and pro-Russians. The Ukrainian activists outnumbered the pro-Russian protesters. City population ethnic structure according to the 2001 census, Zaporizhia had the following ethnic structure. Zaporizhia residents speak mostly in Russian. For official government business, Ukrainian is used. Religion the following religious denominations are prominent within Zaporizhia: Christianity, Orthodox Church. Most citizens are Orthodox Christians either under the Moscow Patriarchate or the Kiev Patriarchate. The main Orthodox church in the city is the Church of the Intercession. Among the other Orthodox churches in the city are St. Nicholas Church and St. Andrew's Cathedral. Protestantism is represented by All Ukrainian Union of Christians of Evangelical Faith, Seventh-day Adventist Church, Full Gospel Church. Catholicism is represented by Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church. The biggest Catholic church is Church of God, the Father of Mercy. Judaism. Orthodox Judaism is represented by one union and 6 communities. Islam. In the Zaporizhia district there are 5 communities which are part of the spiritual administration of Muslims of Ukraine and 4 independent Muslim communities. Hinduism. The city hosts a branch of the Vedic Academy. Economy industry Zaporizhia is an important industrial center of Ukraine, the country's main car manufacturing company, the motorcycle world-famous aircraft engine manufacturer. Well supplied with electricity, Zaporizhia forms, together with the adjoining Donetsk basin and the Nikopol manganese and Kryvyi Raion mines, one of Ukraine's leading industrial complexes. After the end of the Russian Revolution, the city became an important industrial center. The presence of cheap labor and the proximity of deposits of coal, iron ore, and manganese created favorable conditions for large-scale enterprises of the iron and mechanical engineering industries. Today Zaporizhia is an important industrial center of the region with heavy industry, aluminium, and chemical industry. In the city cars, aviomotors, radio electronics are manufactured. The port of Zaporizhia is an important place of transshipment for goods from the Donbas. Zaporozhye, Ukraine's 4th largest steelmaker, ranks 54th in the world and is based in the city. Electricity generation Zaporizhia has a big electricity generating complex catering to industrial demand. The city is a home for the hydroelectric power plant known as Dnieper hydroelectric station located inside the city. The largest nuclear power plant in Europe, the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant is located near the inner Hoda, around 60 kilometers from Zaporizhia. Also there are the biggest thermal power station in Ukraine. Zaporizhia generates about 25% of the whole Ukrainian electricity. Transportation. The Zaporizhia transportation system includes roadway, rail, river and air options for passenger and freight transit. Public city transport includes buses, minivans, trams, trolleybuses and railways. The city has 2 railway stations, Zaporizhia the First and Zaporizhia the Second. The first is the Central Station. It is located in the southern part of the city and is a part of the north-south transit route Simferopol-Moscow. The line of the Zaporizhia the Second Station connects the Donbas coal field with Kryvyi Rog iron ore site. 2 river ports connect Kiev to Kherson and cutter boats travel between Zaporizhia and nearby villages. The city's sole airport includes both domestic and international flights. Culture. The cultural background of Zaporizhia is creating by Philharmonic, a number of museums, theaters, libraries. Among them are, Magra Academic Drama Theatre, Municipal Theatre Labovyi, Theatre for Young People, Theatre of Horse Riding, a Zaporizhzhia Cossacks, Zaporizhia Regional Museum, National Museum of Zaporizhzhia Cossacks History, Zaporizhia Regional Art Museum, Gorky Zaporizhia Regional Public Library. There are a number of small amateur groups, folk music and song bands, art galleries in Zaporizhia. The city regularly holds festivals and feasts, competitions of the Cossack martial arts and art exhibitions. Zaporizhia has an open-air exhibition and sale of Zaporizhzhia City Association of Artists, a colorator near the Fountain of Life at the Mayakovskoye Square. A daily exhibition of artists. Organizations of the city is a unique place in Zaporizhzhia, where people can communicate with craftsmen and artists, watch classes of carving, embroidery, beading and other creative works, receive lessons from professional artists, designers, and cartoonists. Some attractions. The 12 km x 2 km island Khortytsia is located in the geographical center of the city. The city embraces the island by banks of the new and old Dnieper streams. 2 concrete bridges connect the island to the city. They have been designed and constructed by the engineer Boris and Preobrazhensky in 1952. 2 level bridges have height about 54 meters. High level of the bridges is intended for rail and bottom a for cars and pedestrians. The Historical and Cultural Museum Zaporizhian Syke is placed on the northern rocky part of the island Khortytsia. The museum is the reconstructed stronghold of the Zaporizhian Cossacks. All features of the military Cossacks' camp life and their lifestyle are presented in the museum. The smaller islands are located between the dam and the island Khortytsia. Each of these islands has its own legend. On one of them, named Duranmir Skala, Tsar Peter the Great punished the Cossacks by flogging for their betrayal on the side of Charles XII of Sweden during the Great Northern War between Russia and Sweden. The another small island, named Stolb, has a geological feature, which looks like a large bowl in granite slabs. Its diameter equals 1/4 1/4, the depth a 1 1/4. This bowl is named Cossacks' Bowl. People say that in summer days under the hot sun, it is easy to boil water in this bowl, and the Cossacks used it for cooking galushki. The panoramic view of the Dnieper River from Khortytsia Island is very impressive. The straight and long Lenin Avenue ends in the Sotsgorod near the dam, which built up of the constructivist architecture of the 20th century. Gallery. Notable people, category, people from Zaporizhia. Twin towns and sister cities. Zaporizhia has an agreement about sister city relations with. In addition, in 1969 the city renamed one of its streets Raion, the Raion communist government acknowledging that they should honor the Ukrainian city in a similar way, and a part of the Sudeka Grabissia Street towards the square of the Silesian insurgents was renamed to Zaporozhye Street. It is about 1.3 kilometers long. References. Notes sources th though. Ti 3/4 nth micron th 3/4 th squared. th 1/4 th micron th 1/2 th degree th cubed th 3/4 n euro th 3/4 th 3/4 th squared n th micron n euro th degree th n th micron th cubed th 3/4 th 1/2 n th 3/4 th 3/4 th 1/2 th 1/4 th n th micron n th to the first n th 3/4 th squared th degree n euro no. Toponymic dictionary. Fua 3/4 n th squared th degree, th n florin n th micron n th 3/4 th squared th degree n euro th, 1993. One of the few external reports on the city in English is Ukraine, while the Orange Revolution ran out of steam. Daniel Sanford, Moscow correspondent, BBC News, March 10, 2011. External links, official portal of the Zaporizhia City, Zaporozhian region for guests online, one of the portals of the Zaporizhia City, another one of the portals of the Zaporizhia City, http www.bbc.co Mobile World Europe 12681437